for the ad hoc COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee. Just like to remind everyone to keep your cameras off if you're not presenting, and if you are not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. So we're joined today by members of the ad hoc committee, which include Vice Chair Jeff Lawrence, committee members, Regional Councillors Sue Foxton, Michael Harris, Helen Jowett, Carl Kiefer, and Regional Chair Karen Redmond. We also have some additional councillors who are interested in hearing from the public today. Councillors Verbanovic, Clark, Erb, Shantz, and did I miss anyone? Okay, great. So it's great to have those additional councillors here today. So as everyone knows, we're all used to this kind of drill due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're practicing social distancing, and our meetings are being held electronically to ensure the health and safety of everyone. The purpose of the meeting today is to gather some public input on the work of this committee, and there will be a slide presentation from Mr. Dyer on this committee and our mandate and what we're hoping to achieve. And so we're pleased that the delegations have registered today and provide some input into what the region can do with the levers that we have to help ensure economic recovery post-COVID. So this is an official public meeting, and as such, appropriate notices have been distributed and displayed in various newspapers and electronic media. For those people who have registered today, thank you very much for coming. You have 10 minutes to speak, and I am anticipating that there will be lots of questions and a dialogue between members of committee and council with the delegations. So thanks very much for coming. So with that, I think we'll just go to the agenda and get it rolling. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing, thank you very much. Opening remarks, basically I referred to them when I talked about the framework for the meeting. I think one important fact is that, you know, when you talk about economic recovery and what government can do, the playing field is quite large. Federal, provincial government, and even for municipal governments, what we can and cannot do. What this committee is really focused on is the levers that we have as regional government to help aid in economic recovery. So is that capital spending? Is it tax policy? Is it development charges? Is it reducing red tape? Those are a few of the broad areas that we're looking at to help our community in terms of economic recovery. So it's really around the levers that we have as a regional government. And of course, yesterday, we passed some resolutions lobbying the provincial and federal governments to help with financial assistance for our municipalities. So there's much lobbying that goes on to help in economic recovery going forward as well. But the focus of this committee is on our kind of regional levers, our regional program areas. And I'm really pleased that we've had some folks come forward today from the business community and labor to talk about these very issues and provide us with some much needed input. So I think we'll kick it off with the presentation from Craig, our treasurer, help set the framework for the work of the committee, and provide a framework for delegations so they are more fully aware of what we're hoping to achieve. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I trust everyone can see the slides on the screen and can hear me reasonably well. Okay. So thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a brief presentation to get us started today, and I hope to do two things over the next 10 minutes or so. One would be to provide just an overview of the ad hoc COVID-19 Economic Committee and its purpose and mandate. And then secondly, to run quickly through some of the measures and actions that Regional Council and this committee have already taken and put in place to assist with the economic recovery within Waterloo Region. So those are the two things I hope to do in the next few minutes. So just by way of background, this committee was approved and created by Regional Council back at the beginning of June. The focus of the committee, as indicated, is to support the community through economic recovery by reviewing stimulus activities in general. And as Chair Strickland already indicated, some of the areas that we're looking at: tax policy, red tape reduction, capital spending, and development charges, and working collaboratively with economic development offices and chambers of commerce where required. Ultimately, any recommendations coming from this committee will be forwarded to Regional Council, and we'll look to align them with the region's strategic plan. Membership is as indicated and as presented by Chair Strickland a couple of minutes ago, so I don't think I need to go through that. The expectation is that this committee will have a relatively short term, and the hope and expectation is that over the second half of 2020, that the committee will do its work and bring recommendations forward to council to coincide with the review and approval of our 2021 budget. So again, expectation is that's going to happen over the next 6 months. The region has been active, I would say, since the onset of the pandemic, and have been regional councils and committee have been meeting regularly since the middle of March, and have taken a variety of actions. And just briefly, I'll just go through them from a financial perspective. This started in late March with the waiving of late payment charges, interest costs, and bank charges for a 3-month period that captured April, May, and June. All the area municipalities within the region also waived interest and penalties on property taxes outstanding for at least 3 months. So again, that was over that April to June period. Furthermore, 5 of the region's area municipalities have implemented an application-based COVID-19 property tax deferral program. So the region worked collaboratively with the treasurers and CFOs at the area municipalities, and we at the region have facilitated these deferrals by allowing an interest-free extension of property tax payments from the area municipalities. So all the billing and collection is done at the local level, and we're working with the area municipalities to adjust the timing of payments as required. From a user fee perspective, we had incorporated into our 2020 budget a tipping fee increase at the landfill site, planned for April 1st. That has been deferred indefinitely. We also had planned a transit fare increase for July the 1st. That has also been deferred. We did provide 2 months of free transit service. That was through April and May. And throughout the pandemic, we've maintained a significant level of service. So we had a dramatic reduction in ridership, but maintained a relatively high level of service. And that was to ensure physical distancing or promote physical distancing, and also to get essential workers to work, in addition to aiding with the economic recovery in general. Council also provided a $50,000 grant to help with the startup costs for a nonprofit agency who will be acquiring and distributing personal protective equipment. From a capital spending perspective, I would say the region has been supporting the economy through ongoing investment in regional infrastructure. And we have approved, Regional Council has approved a number of significant capital project tender awards over the last 4 or 5 months. I won't go through them all in detail, but would just say that the 7 listed here comprise a little over $170 million worth of work that's been approved. And these are the largest ones. There are many other smaller projects. And as we reported to council back in May, the majority of the projects in our capital program are in some way committed, meaning they either started last year and are continuing this year, or we approved the tenders in the early part of this year. And so we're expecting that the majority of our capital program is going to continue to be implemented. A whole bunch of work done with the area municipalities through our economic development office to approve temporary patio patios on regional roads, working with the area municipalities, and have provided delegated approval authority to Kitchener and Waterloo. That's also been approved by Wilmot and North Dumfries, and it's under review at a couple of other municipalities as well. In total, I think these are numbers, 122 temporary patios approved and 18 applications, which in total would result in about 140 temporary patios placed in a relatively short period of time, in addition to local street closures in order to facilitate the operation of these patios. Number of other activities that have been happening through Best WR, which includes advocacy to senior levels of government in order to access various federal programs that have been put in place. Talent attraction and retention activities in partnership with our economic development offices, continuing to work on investment attraction in order to get as much new investment in the region happening as possible. Business town halls with public health have also taken place in the last couple of weeks. From a region-specific perspective, there have been a number of actions that we've taken in order to mitigate the financial implications to the region as a corporation. This includes the service level reductions at Grand River Transit that I referred to earlier. We had closures with respect to the museum, library, and our childcare centers. They're all in various stages of reopening. We laid off about 400 staff temporarily to offset the significant revenue loss that we've been experiencing. And in addition, we implemented a variety of cost containment measures with respect to vacant positions and discretionary expenditure. And picking up on Chair Strickland's earlier comment, a very busy time with respect to advocacy to the provincial and federal governments. Regional Council has approved, I would say, 3 or 4, maybe 5 separate resolutions now calling on the federal and provincial governments to provide for a financial assistance plan for municipalities. Yesterday's recommendation also included a request that the province review the provincial municipal funding relationship, because in our view, we have a significantly more services funded by the property tax than we should. And a couple of days ago, Chair Redmond and I both spoke to the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs to present directly to the province the impact on municipalities that the COVID pandemic has had. And so action that this particular committee has taken already coming out of the most recent meeting, and this is a recommendation that was endorsed by Council yesterday, which is to advocate to the province of Ontario to expedite the reduction of business education tax rates. And if the province was able to do this, this would provide some tax relief to all commercial and industrial properties. And this recognizes that the education component of the commercial industrial tax bill is actually greater than individually than the regional and local shares. So we know the province has made some progress towards reducing education tax rates. The region will advocate for an expedited reduction to provide this relief. And so finally, Mr. Chair, in terms of today's public meeting, the committee has indicated would like to engage the community to understand better how the region can help support the local economy, how this committee can do its work. And again, focusing on some of the tools that we have available at the region: tax policy, development charges, capital program, red tape, things like that. We understand we're not in nearly as good a position to provide income and revenue support programs like the federal and provincial governments are, but we want to be able to find our place here and provide whatever assistance we can. Chair Strickland will moderate today's meeting. 10 minutes are available to those who registered by the deadline of 4 p.m. yesterday, and any other speakers will have 5 minutes. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will stop the sharing. If there are any questions, be pleased to answer them before we entertain the delegations.
Oh, okay, thanks very much, Craig, for, as usual, a very comprehensive overview of a lot of different activities that have been taking place at the region as we work through this COVID situation. I would also like to add, for the benefit of the delegations, that the committee has spent a lot of time on the planning process and development applications, and we're working with staff at the region and also through them with the local municipalities on examining ways in which we could expedite development applications. So development applications of high interest. So our committee has spent some time talking about how important it is, if there are these development applications that are coming forward, that what we can do to expedite that, shorten the process so we can get those developments underway. Of course, it'd be good for the region in terms of development charges and tax revenue, but also good for the private sector in terms of their financing and getting the projects up and away and generating revenue for their individual entities. So I think it's important for the delegations to know that we're also doing some work on that. Okay, so I don't see any questions, so let's go right to it. The first delegation is Paul Britton from the Waterloo Region Home Builders Association. Welcome, Paul. Is Paul here?
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Paul.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Chair Strickland, committee, and staff. My name is Paul Britton. I'm here representing the Home Builders Association. I won't qualify the Home Builders Association. I think most of you are familiar with it and you've all attended events. So I think the committee well appreciates the significance of the construction industry to the local economy. President Maria Cervera sends her regrets, and I'm standing in her shoes. I'm a past president of the association. I've volunteered in various capacities over 35 years, and I've worked closely with your staff and staff at the of the local municipalities for 35 years, and that's the lens I bring today. With respect to the Home Builders Association, we recognize three fundamental realities. The first is that COVID-19 has had a significant impact on municipal budgets. The second is there's an infrastructure deficit, both in terms of what's required to accommodate growth and aging infrastructure necessary to support the existing community. And the third is that all sectors of the local economy have and will continue to be impacted, and restructuring has just begun. In consideration of these realities, this perspective that we bring is that tax relief, DC exemptions, DC reductions, downward adjustments of fees, although somewhat enticing, are not necessarily the answer and will only serve to prolong the economic impact of COVID-19. In considering our shared problems, we have intentionally ignored the differences between the service delivery of the region and area municipalities. We're all in this together. Our suggestions are intended to be practical, don't come with significant cost to the taxpayers, and recognize that local government plays a major economic role as major employers, service providers, purchasers, consumers, and decision makers. We ask that you consider the following suggestions, and they're in no order of significance. The first is to hire, buy, and spend locally. The second is to prioritize infrastructure based on value add to the local economy and infrastructure required to support development. The third is support and pursue public and private partnerships, for example, credit for service agreements that can advance the delivery of infrastructure at no additional cost to local government. In terms of planning process, identify backlogs and planning applications submitted to all municipalities. As a novel idea, redeploy and share staff between municipalities to clear up backlogs. Assign an ambassador with both the experience and credibility to resolve conflicts such that backlogs can be cleared as soon as possible. Increase the frequency of decision-making by increasing the frequency of meetings required for decisions to be made, such as your committees, councils, and committee of adjustment. Establish staff service standards which exceed past practice. Work leaner, work smarter, and work more efficiently. Should the majority of staff continue to work remotely, find ways to enhance their visibility, their accessibility, and accountability. In your actions, consider liquidity and coordinate costs with cash flow relating to the private sector. For example, tenders can be accepted subject to receipt of funds such that security can be placed just in time. Avoid doubling up on securities and letters of credit associated with overlapping processes and jurisdictions as between the municipalities and the region. Understand key points in the cash flow process and expedite service where cash flow continues to be ejected into the system. Continue your good work with federal and provincial partners to ensure the region receives its fair share of infrastructure investment and funding. Continue to support immigration to the region and provide the social infrastructure and services necessary to support. Continue on your recruitment and retention because it's our brain trust which is one of our biggest assets. Recognize the economics of supply and demand and the impact on local housing prices and work to improve the supply of housing of all types and for all people. With your municipal partners, develop a comprehensive strategy for housing for all, including the homeless, and partner with the local home building industry to deliver houses to people. Work to enhance municipal service delivery efficiencies. Importantly, continue to lead in stopping the spread of COVID-19 and do what you can to avert the risk of a second wave. Finally, work with industry in preparing a post facto evaluation of our collective response to the current pandemic, the lessons learned, and recommendations that can address future pandemics, including the potential for a second wave of COVID-19. There are many specific actions associated with each of these recommendations that warrant further discussion. However, our time is limited today, and we are available on call. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the leadership of Chair Redmond, the mayors, all councillors, Mike Murray, as well as the visibility cooperation received from Michelle Serge, Brenna McKinnon, and Alyssa Bridge throughout this crisis. We thank you for your consideration, and I would be pleased to answer your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. That's exactly the kind of input that we're looking for. So thanks very much for that thoughtful and well-considered list of recommendations covering a broad base of topics. So I'd ask the councillors if you could use the queue and raise your hand if you have any questions for the delegation. Foxton?
Paul, excellent suggestions. I was trying to write them down. I can't write that fast. Could you send us a copy of those things? Because I think some of those are quite doable.
Certainly, Mayor, and I'd be delighted to do it. And what we tried to do is focus on what's doable immediately and not waiting within the 6 months to take recommendations back to council. So
I'm sure this committee completely agrees with you in that.
Okay, so the clerk does have a copy and we will distribute it appropriately.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for the delegation? Okay, so Paul, I have one, and you're right, and I appreciate your sentiment there in terms of being available for further conversations, and I think that's something that we need to do. But I'm just wondering if I could focus on a couple, and that is with respect to the backlogs, because as I said in my opening comments, the committee has been looking at development applications, and and backlogs, and how can we prioritize and expedite. Do you have any specific recommendations around how we might be able to do that?
Well, certainly, as an example, some of the municipalities have not been holding public meetings, and that's been a contributing factor to the backlogs. And there's only so much attention that the decision makers have for these long meetings. And one way around it is to increase the frequency of your public meetings, as an example. And I'm not speaking only to the region, but also to the region and the area municipalities. So that would be one idea. And then the other idea is, as I noted, is redeploy staff and partner. And who says that a regional staff member can assist, say, the city of Waterloo if there is a backlog in the preparation of a staff report. The third suggestion would be, in terms of service delivery, oftentimes it's the problem resolution, or we wait and chase for staff comments from various agencies, whether it's the region to the cities, or the cities to the region, or the Conservation Authority. And that's where the idea of assigning an ambassador comes in, that has the experience to sort of wade through the weeds and cut to the chase and work through to expedite comments and resolve problems such that recommendations can come forward for consideration.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Thanks very much, Paul. And this sounds somewhat similar to some of the work that we've been doing already with our planning staff. And I wonder, Mr. Reguer, maybe if you can just comment on these specific areas of the suggestions from the home builders and some of the work that's underway right now, previous to the start of this committee and since this ad hoc committee has been struck.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Strickland. So, yeah, it's a very interesting set of comments and suggestions by Paul Britton and the home builders this afternoon. We, as a group of planning agencies, we do meet on a regular basis. I believe Michelle Sergis, our Director of Community Planning, is meeting with planning heads every week now to assist on and help with the ongoing streamlining of approvals processes. There is a joint analysis of approvals underway, which is going to help us understand and the opportunities to streamline and expedite development approvals to achieve the outcomes that Paul is interested in achieving there. We've also done a fair amount of work internally. I think, even the pandemic itself has resulted in some significant process improvements by essentially having all of our agencies move to an electronic communications process, which has eliminated and eliminated paper, the transfer of paper files back and forth between agencies, and has accelerated in the process, probably cut between 1 and 2 weeks off of the development approvals process, just simply by eliminating that paper flow. So we're very interested in those types of process improvements. We know that time is money for the development industry, and it's got the full attention of our planning heads across the area municipalities and at the region.
Okay, thanks, Rod. And I know Councillor Rentz wants to get in here, but I'm just wondering, Paul, just to kind of put some closure to this specific item. Paul, from the home builder's perspective, how urgent is it that the region and our municipalities get this backlog and approval process improved, expedited, resolved more quickly, to the industry, given the current situation and beyond?
I'll answer it both short-term and long-term. I think some of the specific ideas were intended short-term and would be considered a priority. From the perspective of if this is about economic recovery, investment in the ground, investment in servicing infrastructure, investment in construction cannot occur while we're stuck in process. And so I would say it's a high priority. And longer term, it is of high priority because when you look at it, carrying costs, process costs are one of the significant contributors to cost of construction and cost of housing. And so longer term, there's some structural issues that I won't get into that could be remedied. Shorter term, the ideas are easily implemented and achievable as a priority.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And hey, Paul, good to hear from you.
Likewise, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you're not. Are you camera shy or are you just in between meetings?
I've got a COVID cut, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Hey, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. The first one is about meetings. I don't know if you're aware that we had an unscheduled council meeting yesterday in committee that was probably the longest one we've had in the history of the region. There's lots of subcommittees meetings on every day with members of council. We met this morning with the Homelessness and Housing Committee, which Councillor Erb chairs. And my question is, you mentioned your industry helping out with the homeless, and I'm wondering if you could share some thoughts on what exactly does that mean? What do you have to offer that could help us resolve this crisis, especially in downtown Kitchener?
Certainly, there's the carrot and the stick, and I think what happens here is we've got very resourceful members that have some ideas to share, certainly some contributions to make financially, and certainly can lend resources in terms of physical construction. So I think there's a lot that can be done. And we've also worked, for example, with the City of Cambridge, somewhat on a voluntary basis, but with respect to affordable housing contributions that, although may be questionable as a condition of approval, were the right thing to do. And we worked through solutions with Cambridge Council on two particular developments that I'm aware of. And, you know, through those contributions in combination with developing community improvement plans and then focusing the resources and deciding who is going to do what in terms of the housing providers, I think would go a long way.
Very good. So you've only worked closely with the City of Cambridge. Any other municipalities in the region, the same issues? Or?
We're in the process right now, working through some specific proposals on a confidential basis in another municipality.
Okay.
And less so with the City of Kitchener.
Oh, that's interesting. So you would prepare to sit down with our staff and our committee and talk about some ways that you could try to assist in some of the ideas that we have? Are you good with that, Paul?
Absolutely. It needs to be a partnership.
I would totally agree. Totally. Okay. Well, we're going to call you up on that one.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And I think, you know, for all the delegations today, we'll follow up with their specific recommendations in terms of how we're going to approach those. Councillor McGarry?
Thank you very much, and thanks, Paul, for your presentation. I joined a little bit late, but I understand the process issues, and thank you for your words about Cambridge. We've very much appreciated this style of collaborative working together in order to solve some of the community issues. So one of the things that Cambridge has stepped forward to do is sort of address the backlog of statutory public meetings. So we've got 2 full-day sessions in order to try and hit the backlog of some of our statutory public meetings, some of them regarding some of the planning applications. Will that be helpful? And as I said, I missed the beginning of your presentation, so apologies if you've already addressed this. Would that help?
Thank you, Mayor McGarry. Absolutely, it would help, and I would consider it a best practice to be shared with the other municipalities. So we appreciate what Cambridge is doing in that regard. And I also appreciate the attention span and the stress and strain on the decision makers sitting for these lengthy meetings. And that's where, you know, more frequent, maybe shorter meetings might assist council in terms of your home life as well.
Thank you. And follow up to that, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And I just wanted to say it's taken a while for all of the considerations for public meetings to be addressed with some of the public participation and staffing the IT requests. And I would say that's really throughout all of the municipalities. So it's taken us a while to get to the point where at least our municipality can move ahead with public meetings. So anyway, we appreciate your comments and we'll work as quickly as we can to address them. Thank you, and thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we have one additional question. Councillor Jowett.
Thanks, Sean. So, Paul, thank you very much. That's a great laundry list. I'm with Mayor Fox, and I'd love to get a list of those things. There's a couple things I'd also like you to give some consideration to. One of them being, please don't laugh because I think I introduced this in 2015, Delegate Planning Authority. If you could just look at that. And then, of course, the other thing is we all know that not everyone is going to build low-income, affordable, or supportive housing. That's not an easy ask. But the fact that the inventory increases has a ripple effect to the actual inventory that increases everywhere, allows for the market to kind of settle down a little bit, making rent and certainly ownership more feasible. So how can we identify the folks that are in your association that are most interested in building affordable housing and create maybe a nimble little group that can work with us to even, direct them a little bit more acutely? And then the final thing I'm going to ask you is, how do we help property owners who rent commercially, residentially, to recover from some of the COVID Band-Aids that were put in place? For example, moratorium on evictions, reducing rents. I know that we put a Band-Aid on by deferring property taxes, but that is not a sustainable solution. So those are the kinds of things that I wanted to bring to the table. And I brought them all up at once in case I never got a chance again. So I hope you've been able to digest all of those.
I've digested a few of them, Councillor Jowett, and I'll try to respond. In terms of how to identify a group of interested members to assist on the affordable housing issue, I'll take that back to the Home Builders Executive, and we'll put together a group of volunteers and be delighted to work with committee or any individual council to see what we can do in collaborating together to find solutions. With respect to the issue of delegated approval authority, I think it's a good idea. At the same time, the municipalities need to have the systems in place to take on that particular responsibility. My general comment would be, we've got likely too many people doing too much too slowly. And, oftentimes what happens is, I'm well familiar with the delegation to the City of Kitchener. The region continues to have a role regardless of the delegation. And in Cambridge, as an example, the region has approval authority with respect to plans of subdivision.
Right.
And the city of Cambridge continues to have a role. So ultimately, I think it's a longer term solution in terms of how to rationalize the service to make sure that it is operating in the most effective and efficient manner. What has happened in our organization, as an example, is we met internally to say, okay, how are we going to lean out and provide better service at lower cost, more effectively to our clients as we're working through this pandemic? I think the same thinking process needs to occur as we work to maybe some long-term structural change that, in my view, is most necessary.
All right. So do you have any suggestions for some of the Band-Aids we've been putting on? I feel like, and maybe you can even clarify this for me. Sometimes I think about the trickle-down effect of some of the, for example, the policy that was put in place where a small business owner could apply for the $40,000 loan, right? So they apply for the $40,000 loan, and it's a beautiful loan, by the way, because if you pay it off by 2025, you get to keep $10,000. I can't. It's a great loan, but however, that being said, what they neglected to do was actually tie in the fact that you're getting this loan, you should be paying your rent. There was they didn't finish that loop. So I think it's left a middle layer of commercial owners very vulnerable financially, which, isn't just a fiscal problem for the owner. It has a ripple effect for the entire marketplace.
Councillor Jowett, I'm sure I'll allow Paul to have a chance to respond to that, but I also think that the Chamber of Commerce have a view on that as well. So Paul, please respond to the best of your ability, and if you don't feel comfortable on this area because you're representing the home builders today, I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce guys will respond. But Paul, I'll leave it up to you.
Certainly, I'm not really going to get into landlord and lease type of issues, but what I can say is, in terms of what most people pay in rent, the loan that's available is really inadequate. I'll leave it at that.
Much appreciated. Sorry, I've been looking for someone to answer it.
we can have an offline discussion here, Councillor. Got some ideas.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Paul, we have another question, Councillor Rubanek.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sean. Very much appreciate, Paul, you coming in today. I too would appreciate receiving your summary list. I think there's a great list, some of which I know we've already been working on, and some which I think are new ideas that, quite frankly, can be implemented. I do know we've added some meetings like Committee of Adjustment into the calendar. They originally weren't scheduled to start till next month, and we've added some this month to help. But I certainly would be, willing and interested in sitting down with you or any members if there's particular bottlenecks. I know we've been able to work with some members to get their issues and concerns addressed, and certainly would continue to do so if there are others. On the issue of affordable housing, can you remind me? I believe the home builders do have a rep on our affordable housing task force. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure they have, and I know there's a series of recommendations that'll be coming down in the next little bit on that. But I'm very excited to hear about the interest of the private sector to be involved in this. Quite frankly, it's going to take all orders of government, the feds, the province, the region, municipalities, and the private sector partnering together to tackle the backlog that we have. So that was certainly very relevant information, because this is a priority for not only regional council but Kitchener Council as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the more we talk, the more we realize how much we share in terms of interest in solving the problems we're all facing.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, Paul. That was really valuable input and insight, and thanks for responding to all the questions, and thanks for the participation of the committee members as well. That is a great list. We'll review it and we will respond in kind, and also take you up on your offer around the affordable housing and keeping the lines of communication wide open. So thanks so much, Paul. Really appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.
Okay, so just for the benefit of committee, I'm not sure if everyone's aware, and we've been dealing with lots of Zoom meetings and agendas and so far. So over the last couple of weeks, we have 5 delegations today, and so the next one we're pleased to have is Ian McLean and Art Sinclair from the Greater Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Art. I saw Ian earlier. I don't see him anymore.
I'm here, but some reason I can't get my camera doing. I think it's shut off on your side, so I don't know if you're... Anyways, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Oh, okay, start my video. There I am.
There you go.
I just wanted to prove to everyone that I actually had a coat on. I was going to do a tie, but that was too far since I haven't had a suit on since March the 8th. So,
right.
Pretty much.
You're not the only one.
Thank you.
You would admit to that.
Well, in my basement, my dog is not very fussy about how I dress. So I want to thank you, Chair Strickland and Regional Council colleagues for giving us the opportunity. I'm joined by my colleague, Art Sinclair. Of course, he's Vice President of Advocacy and Policy at the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Just a reminder that we are greater because of Woolwich Township. I don't know if Sandy Mayor Shantz is on there, but we're pleased to be here today to speak with you. I'll touch on a few of the themes. I think your staff have our prepared remarks, which feel free to share with the staff and with councillors. I'm not going to read through that verbatim. I'm going to touch on those, add a few other things, and then leave as much time as to answer any questions that you might have. I want to say we are here on behalf of our own chamber, but many of these comments would reflect the work that the Best Waterloo, Business Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region organizations have been working on together for, well, since March, since the beginning of March. And that includes, obviously, Tony Lamantia and the folks at the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation, Ian Klugman and Matt and the gang at Unitech, and Greg DeRocher from the Greater, we want him to be part of us, but he's actually the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to maybe just highlight that the Best Waterloo, I'll maybe start there. The coordinated approach that we've had in terms of advocating to senior levels of government, to the municipalities and the region, I think has been I'm very pleased with how that's been going. We've raised many issues. We've probably had 3 or 4 public letters that have gone out to the province and the federal government. We've also had some that were privately shared thoughts on support, everything from the government support programs to supporting for not-for-profit organizations and communities. Support for, and we've written a letter probably before even the municipalities put their motions forward about the importance of strong municipalities for not only the region of Waterloo, but everywhere across the province, across the country. Strong municipalities fiscally and financially are going to be incredibly important for business to be able to invest and to be the driver of a recovery across the country. Certainly, we've been focused in Communitech taking the lead on PPE and personal protection equipment, not only for the public sector and healthcare, but for businesses that are going to want to open up. They're going to have need for those things. The university and college sector, obviously, you all know, is so incredibly important to this region, but right across the province and the country. And so making sure that they are, that we're supporting municipalities and the public sector, broader public sector, is a huge foundational piece of economic success moving forward. Having said all that, business will need to drive the recovery. There's just no two ways about it. It's going to take investment, innovation by business to create the jobs which are going to drive economic well-being for the the country and certainly for this region. So I'll touch on a few points and then be happy to answer any questions. Core infrastructure will be key. I think that's something that is you've heard from Paul, and I'm sure you'll hear from others. Is not something to skimp on. Now's the time to continue to make those investments for the region, both now and into the future. I think about our Connect the Corridor coalition and the work that we've been doing. We're moving steadily along the path to getting all-day two-way GO service. And while, if you look at it in this particular moment, transit is in a not being used as much as it will be. Now's the time to build it, because we will pass the pandemic. We will move back to the time when people and talent needs to move back and forth along the innovation corridor, and so we need to have that infrastructure in place. Highway 7, great announcement. I'm very pleased. That's been something I think someone said in social media. Art's been to about 47 announcements over the last 11 years around saying that was going to happen. So, maybe it's lucky 48th for Art. But I do think that I guess I'm kind of optimistic. We've been kicking this around. I'm not sure why they would have made the announcement now if they weren't going to do something about it. And I think so I'm more optimistic than I have been. But that's a great signal. That's important. Moving goods, moving people between in this corridor between Guelph and the region of Waterloo, but also as a important infrastructure piece for southwestern Ontario more broadly. We talked about red tape. I think red tape and the easing how business interacts with government is going to be really important. And it's not a glib, and it's not to say that there isn't important work that needs to be done and you got to do due diligence, but speed. And I give full credit when we made some and heard how are we going to open up restaurants. They're going to require patio, certainly in the good weather. I think all municipalities, the region, public health, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, everyone came together and made it happen. And I think that's the kind of effort that's going to be required that's one example, but there'll be other examples where speed is tremendously important as businesses are thinking about the investments that they can make. And I'll say this a couple of times. Many businesses, the vast majority are small and medium sized. Many of them are on the razor's edge right now of going out of business or staying in business. So every time counts, support counts, ease of sort of getting decisions and knowing when they can get going and get business up and running. That's really going to be important. The other part I would say is this recovery will be slower than anyone wants it to be, partially because of the fact that we have of the pieces along the way, social distancing, being able to, numbers of people you can, businesses, etc., and supply chains ramping up. So it's going to be friendly to business because they're the ones that are going to be bringing people back to work, creating jobs, and frankly, the tax revenue to pay the bills. I want to sort of touch on masks, and I give congratulations to the region of Waterloo. I know you're talking about economic issues, specifically what you can do. Probably the best thing that the regional council has done and will do is to keep that in place until there's a vaccine. What we know is if there is another shutdown because we don't manage the pandemic and manage the spread, we will, and we have another shelter in place, which may be at some point the right thing to do from a public health perspective. It will be devastating for business, and many of the businesses that have held on so far will not hold on, and that means job losses. It means lost tax receipts for all levels of government. But most importantly, it means people and their families won't have a livelihood. So masks is the best thing that we can do right now, and we're calling on our business members. We applaud the way that the region has done it. I think anecdotally, I will tell you, the Best Waterloo group has had a number of chats about it just this week. People have done what I expected them to do, both in business and as individuals. Most people are just wearing their mask, and that is incredibly important. So I know it comes up, and I'll put this on the bucket. It comes up for I guess, renewal at the end of August or September or something. I just will put right now, keep it in place. Until we have a vaccine, it needs to be in place in public spaces to manage the spread. I would say a couple of things that Paul had said, and we're happy to talk about any of these issues because we continually talk about them. You know, infrastructure, red tape, taxes, and masks, I think were the ones I wanted to focus on today. The work that we've done with Best Waterloo around the government programs, happy to answer any questions around what we see as being issues there. But Paul's list, immigration and talent, that's going to drive our today, our tomorrow, and every day past that. So that's got to be something that we invest in and make a priority for our region. The housing issues around not only affordable housing, but housing broadly. We'll still continue to have population growth, and we need to have choice in communities and styles of housing for the people that live here. I think our continued support and thinking more broadly. So the work that we're doing as a Chamber of Commerce with Cambridge and other chambers like Guelph and right into the innovation or along the innovation corridor into Toronto. Our economic zone, we have to work together. And so the more collaboration and cooperation we have between, we're doing our bit with chambers of commerce, but municipalities and working together, especially in this economic zone between Toronto and Waterloo Waterloo Region is going to be pretty important. And again, the support for the broader public sector, municipalities again, I come back to that, having strong municipalities, strong post-secondaries is going to be important for a whole host of reasons. And so you can count on us to be, beating that drum and talking about that as an important issue for senior levels of government, federally and provincially, as we come out of the pandemic. So I'll maybe leave it with, having said all that, I hope it didn't sound pessimistic. We're actually pretty optimistic about the fact that it'll be slower than we want, but I think that business has been pretty resilient. There's a pent-up desire to do what we need to do to get open and stay open, which means doing our reopening right, and that we're all in this together. So everything that the region can do to support, be business friendly, will be incredibly important. Last thing I'll leave you with, and I know there will come a time when we have to pay all the bills, and we had a Best Waterloo all hands where we had probably 75 people on, and Greg Droscher made the comment, at some point we're going to have to pay the, $750 billion or whatever it is, $500 billion of support that's gone out during this pandemic. And there is going to come a time for that. And there'll be lots of time for discussion around tax increases. And now's not the time for that. Business cannot afford to be having taxes raised because that will stifle their ability to every dollar that they bring in, they need to be reinvesting back into hiring another person, creating a new job, finding a new customer. And so cash flow, and you heard Paul talk about cash flow. Cash flow is really important. So I think you just got to keep in mind that most businesses are really on sucking fumes as it relates to cash flow, and they will be for a period of time. Last part on that, most businesses don't make a nickel. Like, they don't make money until they're getting 90% of their revenue projections, or in the case of months or others, 95, 96% before they make any money. So understand that they're in very, very difficult shape right now. So being, recognizing that and do can to be as accommodating as possible in this next period of time will be really important. So I appreciate, thanks to Art for preparing our document. I think that fills in some other gaps, but happy to share those thoughts and answer any questions that you might have. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ian. And we do have that information, and we will circulate that to members of council. We do have some questions. Councillor Kiefer.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks Ian and Art for coming today and giving us the comments and the suggestions. I did want to clarify something. I mean, we only have the one half of the business team here, but I'd just like to say that for clarity, Mr. Droscher told me that you were wanting to join his operation, not the other way around. But anyways, thanks for that. Well, as long as we're coming together.
Okay, guys, are we talking about reducing red tape? Oh, never mind. I'm not going to go there.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm just wondering, I don't see anyone else in the queue, but I'm wondering, Ian, as you are aware, like the business education taxes that we pay in Waterloo Region, our businesses pay, is well above the average for similar sized municipalities across Ontario. And yesterday we passed a resolution to the province to take a look at the business education taxes we pay in the region of Waterloo to see if they can make them more equitable and reduce them. What do you think about that measure, and is that something that you can support or have advocated for on behalf of businesses in the past?
I will defer to Art, as I know my limitations, and Art is much more familiar with the detail on this than I am, but maybe Art, you want to take a crack at that?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Chair Strickland, on members of council for your efforts in that respect. Yes, I started with the chamber in 2006, and business education taxes was a major issue for our chamber and pretty much every chamber across Ontario at that point in time. So again, it's been an issue like Highway 7 that we've had some difficulty moving ahead, and I don't want to say anything negative about the announcement yesterday. We are moving ahead on Highway 7, but certainly business education taxes has been a perennial issue for us in the business community, and to see the support of regional council on this particular initiative and trying to move it forward and trying to get some resolution to this is a significant advancement. So again, thank you very much for your efforts.
So I'm just wondering if we could send you a copy of our resolution and background, if the chamber, and maybe you can coordinate with the other chambers as well, would send a letter in of support
Yes.
to the minister.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think Mr. Dyer is still on the call here. So if Mr. Dyer, one of his staff members, and our clerks can coordinate, that'd be great. Mr. Dyer?
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, great. All right. I don't see any other questions. So thanks very much, Ian. And there's lots of takeaways that I heard from your discussion, for sure. But speed and value-added infrastructure, I think, are really two key things, and also limited tax increases.
Yeah, and we're available. I know this is this is an iterative process. You're going to have lots of work to do over the next period of time. The work that again through Best Waterloo, that Tony and his gang and Greg and Ian Klugman, we're here, happy to either come to meetings like this or have offline with staff on as things emerge, to give our input on that. I'd say we're all in it together, so happy to participate in this, and wish you well with the rest of your meeting.
Great. Thank you very much, Ian. Thanks, Art. Really appreciate it. Okay, our next delegation is Kelly Dick from the Waterloo Regional Labor Council. Nice to see you again, Kelly.
Hey, everybody. Okay, sorry, just get my video done. Thanks, Chair Strickland and members of the council for having me today. I did speak yesterday, so I'm going to go over some notes that I have as far as what our ask is from the Canadian Labour Congress and the Waterloo Region Labour Council. So my name is Kelly Dick. I'm the president of the Waterloo Region Labour Council, have been for about 2 years, and currently working right now on the Economic Recovery Strategy Team Task Force with the Canadian Labour Congress. So that being said, we do have a document, and I'm sure that everybody has got a copy of that. If you don't, I certainly am willing to send it out to you. In that document, you'll see a lot of the asks that we have from the CLC and the Labour Councils across the country, not necessarily just the Labour Council here in Waterloo Region, but the Labour Council across the provinces as well. So we are here, both federal and the provincial governments, as far as lobbying goes, which I actually will get to in a moment. So Canada is in the midst of the worst unemployment crisis since the Great Depression, as we know. The workers have lost their jobs and now face an uncertain future. Canada's unions are proposing a set of ambitious initiatives, and they are very ambitious, in order to achieve a strong, sustainable, and inclusive economic recovery. It is the recovery that places workers directly at the center of every policy and strategy going forward. COVID-19 has laid bare the underlying inequalities of our society. The labor movement has been witness to the growth and divide between the haves and the have-nots, and is ready to advise on ways to narrow the gulf to ensure fairness for everyone. Our priorities are targeted with focuses on getting Canadians back to work and fully employed, decently paid and productive jobs. Focuses on public investment in infrastructure, very huge. We talked about infrastructure a lot, I think, today and yesterday, as far as, affordable housing and, roads and things like that. On a renewed and expansion of public services. Focuses on being gendered and inclusive and committed to reducing inequality. Inequality seems to be the target in most of the conversations that we're having right now. Doug Ford actually refers to this as the cracks in the ship, and COVID-19 definitely has shown us where those cracks are. And unfortunately, it's the people in our society that are feeling the inequality that are being hit the most. Canada's unions reject the failing thinking and economic austerity. In 2010, the Conservative government cut spending to balance budgets and prioritized financial supports for banks and corporations instead of investing in people and communities. Those decisions led to years of sluggish economic growth, persistently high unemployment, growing precarity and insecurity, and rising inequality. See, again, it's the inequality. As temporary layoffs became permanent job losses, strong job creation and other measures are required to prevent a rise in long-term unemployment. This situation requires bold steps to generate unemployment or to generate employment and economic activity in order to foster strong economic growth. We need an ambitious program of public investing in infrastructure, as I said, like childcare and other productive, enhancing job creating sectors. These investments will, in the long run, pay for themselves in greater labor market participation, higher productivity, rises incomes, and increased tax revenues. As the federal government works with the provinces and the territories, conditions should be set on transfers to achieve national standards and meet the national objective of inclusivity and equality. Canada must build a future that improves working conditions and builds our collective resilience. Canada's unions are ready to help mold this bold future and build our path to recovery. Cooperation will be key to our collective success. And this begins with a couple things that we have actually as our sticking points. Prioritizing health and safety in the workplace. We've seen with COVID-19, many workplaces were not prepared with proper PPE. I come from the retail sector, and I know that my colleagues are on the front line, have been right from the very beginning, and we were one of the last ones to receive personal protective equipment. So we want to make sure that providing personal protective equipment is adequate. Workplace health and safety precautions are being implemented in all workplaces. Worker training and safety measures, so making sure that we're training people how to use PPE, which is absolutely imperative, which at the beginning, I don't think in some industries was happening. Expanding our health and safety measures and giving people paid sick leave. Now, in 2018, the Ontario Conservatives got rid of a lot of the language that we had as far as labor relations in the Ontario Labor Relations Act. And in the Employment Standards Act, we also had language in there for paid sick days, and that's not something that we're seeing right now. So we don't want people to go to work if they're sick. Obviously, if a second wave comes, we want to make sure that our workers are protected, and if you're sick, that you're able to stay home and you're still able to collect a paycheck when you do that. So during the pandemic, workers raising concerns about health and safety and refusing unsafe work have been either punished or fired in some instances. And we know that in some of the other regions in the province that this actually is to be true. Anti-worker laws over the past 4 decades have hindered workers from unionizing and hamper unions trying to protect their members, and these need to be reversed. Working with employers, governments need to increase community mental health and social supports for women and vulnerable groups affected by unemployment, financial distress, isolation, and violence. I made reference yesterday to domestic violence actually is down about 25% since COVID, and Family Children's Services is seeing between 36 and 40% of a decrease in. So some people might think this is a positive thing, and it's absolutely not a positive thing. We're seeing those numbers dip because people are unable to get out of their homes. They're isolated with each other, which and you put job loss on top of that, and it increases people's vulnerability in our community. Labor must be at the table providing guidance with respect to workplace health and safety that need to be in place before we continue to open up our economy. And I want to say a big shout out to the region for the steps that we've already taken in stage 1 and stage 2 and working towards stage 3. I was absolutely thrilled when the bylaw came down about the masks. Now, everybody in my family, nobody goes out without a mask. Nobody that I know goes out without a mask, which is awesome. And I think I agree with Ian McLean. I think we definitely need to keep that going because if a second wave comes, we want to make sure that people are protected. A focus on full employment, good jobs, and reducing inequality. Again, the inequality thing comes up again. So lifting the minimum wage and employment standards, reducing insecurity and precarity in work, which means, creating more full-time jobs. The job sector right now has actually gone up since stage 1 and stage 2 have opened. The problem with that is it's part-time precarious work. So what we're looking for is employers to create full-time jobs, good paying full-time jobs where people are stable, there's stability in their environment, they have benefits and things like that. Public and not-for-profit childcare, which is huge again, because without childcare, many people can't go back to work. And employment services supports for workers. Public investment in physical and social green infrastructure. We all know that the climate crisis that we're in right now is the biggest thing that we will ever see in our lifetime. And the economic recovery plan should prioritize investment in social infrastructure, including investments in acute health and long-term care, home care, early childhood education, and care centers and post-secondary education, recreation centers, and arts and culture installations. So in saying that, green economy investments in public transit, green and renewable energy conservation measures, and home and building retrofits will generate decent jobs and allow Canada to achieve its climate targets, we hope. Climate targets are huge again, so anything that we can do in our recovery program, our recovery moving forward, where we can keep the green economy mind is definitely something that that we definitely are pushing for. Expanding and renewing affordable housing. We've heard a lot about affordable housing. We've got some issues in some of the places, some of the communities here in town where affordable housing has been introduced, and it's our belief that affordable housing definitely is one of the biggest hurdles that we're up against right now as far as people in our community. So we've got apartment buildings that are going up that are astronomical in their rents, and I'm not really sure how people making $14 an hour are going to be able to afford $1,800 in change plus utilities if they're only making $14 an hour. So, affordable housing is definitely something that needs to be in the forefront. In reforms to long-term care, so we right now in the Canadian Labour Congress and the Ontario Federation of Labour are fighting the Conservatives right now in their Bill 175. Now, I won't go into Bill 175. You can look that up. It's a bill that is putting for-profit long-term care homes. They want to increase that, and what we're looking at is putting that back in the hands of the public to protect our seniors and to make sure that we don't have the kinds of incidences that we were having with over 1,600 deaths in long-term care homes. So it's a lot to digest, and as I said, a lot of these things have been touched on already, and I know that the region is definitely working towards working on a lot of these things. If they're not already on the table, they've been discussed, which is awesome. So the CLC and the Waterloo Region Labour Council have been actively lobbying both levels of government through online petitions, letters to the editor. I've written editorials, media interviews, YouTube videos, emails, phone calls, and other means to fight for the emergency funding for all municipalities in the province. So with a collective effort by both Municipal Council and Labour, we can work towards our economy recovery plan and putting people back to work. That ends my presentation, and I'm more than happy to take questions.
Well, thanks very much, Kelly. We really appreciate you coming in 2 days in a row and sharing the views of the Labour Council. Very much appreciated. And I agree that much of the work that you're doing is aligned with trying to achieve as well in terms of health and safety, inclusivity, diversity, and also investing in critical infrastructure. So absolutely no argument there. So Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kelly, for coming in. We're gonna have to stop meeting like this. No, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing the views of the trade union movement. A lot of the points you've raised dealing with us, we were working on it. I mean, we could always use more help with the homeless issue. We met this morning. In fact, I don't know if you were on the call when the home builders had offered to sit down. This is something where we all need to pull on the same rope to try to make this happen in our community. So I know there's a big will from all 7 local municipalities in the region as well to find the right path to get to where we can provide housing for everybody in our community. And it's never been stronger, and having your voice added to it, I think, would really go a long way. So I don't know if you're aware, but in my former life, I was vice chair of the Regional Labor Council. And I think the whole idea of being able to put people back to work and getting our economy back up, whether you own a business or you work for a business, it's almost the same thing. If business owners don't have employees, there's no point in having that business. So I appreciate you coming in. I think that you're a great, strong voice for the labor movement in this community, and I wish you well. And hopefully we can work together on a lot of these different issues and try to get our community running and back up and strong again. So thanks for coming in, Kelly.
I definitely look forward to continuing working with the council and you know, broadening that and looking at affordable housing, you know, definitely having us be involved in those conversations as well. So I would definitely like to hook up with that meeting if that's possible.
Sure, we can make that happen. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you very much, Kelly. I have no further questions. Thanks again for coming in and sharing your views. Are very important to us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. We definitely appreciate it, and we definitely look forward to continuing this great work. Thanks so much,
again, Kelly. Yeah, thanks. Okay, our next delegation is Chanakya Ramdev. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Mr. Ramdev, welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, I wanted to thank the council members who are part of this committee for not only passing the mask bylaw, but I saw it was the unanimous pass, so I really appreciate it. And I've been on LRT yesterday, and I saw there was just one person not wearing the mask. Everybody else was wearing a mask. So not only has the implementation been successful, the public has been accepting of the bylaw as well. So today I wanted to talk about 2 things that I thought may help small businesses, not just my business, but in general, others as well. And I can give you a little bit context of what we do, then the 2 suggestions, and then I would love to answer any questions that any of the committee members might have. So I am the founder of Sweat-Free Apparel. It is a technical textile company, which pretty much means we put technology in textiles so that our clothes can do more than just as an article that you wear. And originally we would solve sweat stains and sweat smell in clothes. That's why it was called Sweat-Free Apparel. But to do our part during the COVID crisis, we tried to tweak our technology so that instead of preventing sweat from passing through, we could prevent droplets itself from passing through. So I'm very happy to announce we've created the world's first reusable waterproof mask right here in Waterloo. And a couple of weeks ago, we got an order from Metrolink. So we won their contract, and we would be providing them with 10,000 masks as an initial order. So when I had seen Craig talk about capital spending, I think that would be a great thing, not just to help with cash flow, but to get the businesses running again. So if there's an opportunity, not just with PPE, but in general, anything that the region of Waterloo needs in terms of procurement. So one of the things I would suggest is to choose a local vendor over a vendor that is in a different place, just because that cash flow then circulates back to everyone within the region. So procurement is one thing that I wanted to suggest. Second thing was, and that is something that would cost the region money. The second thing was KW Small Business of the Day. This was kind of a theme where I was thinking, what do businesses need right now? They need awareness and they need the ability to find new customers. At the same time, I understand, especially from the presentation by Craig earlier, that the tax revenues and budgets are constrained as well. So this was a way where we could help create awareness and help even get customers so that the businesses can become self-reliant without costing the region any money. And the way I thought it could be implemented was something as simple as tweet from the region of Waterloo's Twitter account that can get reposted, reshared by all the council members, where net it doesn't cost the region anything, but it creates a lot of awareness, especially local awareness for the local businesses, so that they might be able to get a few customers. So procurement, that's the capital side of things, if the region has the ability to spend. But the other thing is KW, and it can be one business every day. So that's why KW Small Business of the Day. So every day we can create awareness for a new business, and at the same time, it doesn't cost region anything. So those were the two things.
Okay, great. Very, very interesting suggestions, and congratulations on your sale to Metrolinx.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest that somehow we facilitate an introduction between you and our procurement department, because we're actually having a free mask giveaway next week on GRT's various locations. So our procurement department is purchasing masks, so there's certain requirements and so on. So I'm just wondering what's the best way. Why don't you just email me afterwards, and I'll link you up to our procurement department to see if there's an opportunity there for your masks to get into the procurement process with the region. Councillor Jowett.
Well, Sean, you took the words right out of my mouth, so I'm done.
Okay. Okay, great. So I don't see any other questions. Thanks so much for coming in. Continued success, and we'll see what we can do.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Representing Waterloo Regional Tourism Marketing Corporation, we have Mark Bingeman. Welcome, Mark.
Hello. Everybody can hear? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair Strickland and committee members. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you regarding the catastrophic effects of COVID-19 has had on the hospitality tourism industry in our region, and to help find a path to a better place for the benefit of both our industry and our residents. Unfortunately, Minto Schneider couldn't be here today to present due to a scheduling conflict, and has asked me to fill in for her in her place. It is bittersweet that some business sectors have been experiencing significant growth and prosperity during this time, while other sectors are facing closures at an alarming rate with an uncertain path to sustainability. Our hotels, restaurants, attractions, entertainers, arts and culture segments, and businesses that are supporting players to hospitality and tourism are all the things that help create Waterloo Region to be vibrant, to be a vibrant place to live, to attract new residents, to attract new businesses, and certainly to attract tourists. All these are at risk. Locally, I'm concerned that many people are thinking that we're coming out of this crisis. In the hospitality tourism sector, we're actually only getting into the crisis and into the financial hardships that are yet to come. Interestingly, just last night on the CTV News, they reported that the broad business sector is facing a potential 20% closure rate, and hospitality at a 34 to 40%, which would include hotels. And this is even worse for the attraction sector. To this point, the Destinations Canada Commission study in March warns of a potential 60% closure rate of attractions across Canada. Make no mistake, our region will experience this as well. Regardless of the size or stature of firms in hospitality tourism, We all face the same problems. Hospitality tourism thrives on volumes of patrons to survive, regardless of their product. Human engagement is the business that we are all in. The hospitality tourism sector has mobilized to navigate through these times, through COVID-19, with a working group of industry leaders. WRTMC is also advocating and communicating situational awareness to the various government bodies and industry groups. And the WRTMC board is launching a special strategic planning committee to cut a path for the organization to get through to the other side of COVID-19. Money is the ultimate support. There's no question about that. However, understanding that municipalities too are certainly struggling, here are some thoughts for your consideration. Yeah. Call these finding a way out. One, industry needs our municipalities to be advocates and lobby to the higher tiers of government for support. Certainly this comes in terms of, as has been mentioned, the rent program support needs alteration for more business to take advantage of. The wage subsidy, although has been recently extended to December, make no mistake, this will need to continue well into 2021. Liquidity still continues to be a major problem, and most of all, the requirement for debt forgiveness. Our industry is or will shortly be at the mercy of the banking sector with the levels of debt required to weather the storm. And again, debt can be a good thing when you're growing and building a business, but when you're going into significant debt just to survive, the long-term viability can be very bleak. An additional item is to push for more regional control over business openings and allowances to allow those able to meet requirements to operate. The province's format is not working well enough to save businesses. And keep in mind, not everybody is rushing out to engage in activities. Second point, cooperative marketing and communications across all levels of the municipalities, between municipalities and with groups like WRTMC. We all need to have a unified education piece to the public so that our industry can survive. Our industry will be dependent on a regionalized economy for spending for quite some time to come. There certainly can be leveraging municipal assets like web presences, outbound communications, communications with media, marketing on buses, and other assets that all the municipalities have access to that can be done in one joint initiative to help communicate to our patrons and our residents. There will be competition from other communities to lure spending to their areas because, obviously this has been the great equalizer amongst all the communities. We need to be coordinated to protect ours and obviously to draw others in to garner some financial prosperity. This is not only consumer focused, but business focused as well. We need to communicate to our local businesses to help support the other businesses that they come to know and expect, whether it's their local restaurants, their meeting places, entertainment items. All of these are in risk and need more support now more than ever before. 3, tourism must be at the table when it comes to municipal planning levels to help guide and give a tourism lens to when decisions are being made. Shouldn't community planning also have a tourism planning lens as well? This can apply to imagine how we're planning out sports complexes in different facilities, certainly for our residents, but these are also assets that can be leveraged on a tourism component as well. What are the items that make us memorable as a community destination? Obviously the importance of Highway 7, the importance of billboards, and how these can be coordinated as an effort across the entire region. I'll give you a little story here on this as well. Usually annually, a group of business owners and I get together and we go on a trip to different locations. And 2 years ago, we were in Dallas. And even to this day, everybody talks about that retreat to Dallas. The one thing that they think about, of all the great things that we did, they all keep talking about the fact that we drove all over. Nobody used Uber, nobody used cabs. We used those crazy electric scooters to get everywhere we wanted to go. Considering that from a bunch of business executives, that probably did a lot of cool things. That's the one thing that 2 years later that they still talk about. You know, again, how do we make our community a memorable destination to all? Fourth item, municipal planning and operations need to assess how business is done, how they're doing it, the red tape and all the internal questions. Certainly, more housing to increase our population. There's no question this has been brought up many times before, but certainly from the home builder side, obviously that's a business that they're in. But again, the more people moving to our community, the more people that are emigrating to our community, those are more patrons for all of our activities. That'll provide a faster turnaround for things occurring. And certainly rationalizing processes and changing attitudes as to how we make things happen on a municipal level. You know, creating that environment of how can we get this done versus, you know, does this meet our requirements or shouldn't this be occurring? You know, now is the time to ramp up the EDAC, economic development groups, to get, you know, not to get caught up with rules. There's no question. There's certainly more typical hiatus, but now's the time that quite honestly, you know, we all need to be involved, and we have to realize with the current municipal environment, you know, we want to have a balance of work life at the same point in time, but there's no question in private industry, every workday ends in a Y. And so we need to be working to benefit everyone. Certainly softening zoning and other restrictions that have historically stifled growth and creativities. Without the question, some businesses will require some assistance in these areas to help navigate to a better location afterwards. How transit operates, creating strategic partnerships to get people out. This is certainly a revenue source for the region, but there's many opportunities that unfortunately have not been seized in the past to help not only get more people using transit, but also providing some other revenue generation for the transit system. Looking at the creation of entertainment zones where special permissions and allowances can occur. We're very lucky that certainly within our region, across the entire region, there's almost many of these locations have already arisen. Belmont Village, obviously St. Jacobs, Hespeler, you know, the BIAs. There's certain areas, you know, we can actually cultivate this and activate it and make this once again not only more dynamic from a tourism standpoint, but also dynamic from our own resident standpoint to be involved and hopefully drive this further. And another piece would be to look at how we handle things coming in. You know, when I think back to when we were certainly doing large special events like the Ever After concerts, the CMT Music Festival, and the other large events, you know, our community had gotten a bit of a reputation of having giving these groups coming in, bringing this economic prosperity and entertainment, a bit of a rough ride. You know, moving forward, we need to look at those a little differently, and how do we entice, quite honestly, those things to happen more when that time comes, or if they can be done in a socially distant and certainly COVID appropriate way. Finally, you know, we need our municipalities to be a catalyst for change. Funds will be stressed, and now's the time to deal with subjects that municipalities typically shy away from due to controversy. Now is the time to looking at public-private partnerships. Where are there uniquenesses that can come together to the benefit of all? You know, there are likely some projects that are not sustainable for many years or longer. Now's the time to act on these. You know, is there another way for them? Can they partner with other organizations, other groups? Can they partner with private groups to help that? You know, at which case, you know, sustainability is a key, and if not, you know, the cord may have to be cut. Incentives for new development for our industry. Certainly, I heard Paul Britton speak earlier. His comment on the dangerous slope of DC charges. Certainly, being a builder, it's a real pain to have to cut that check for those large amounts too. But we do understand why they're there. You know, maybe there's other ways around it. Maybe they can be funded over time, over a period of time to help that. There's no question our tourism industry and hospitality industry is going to be hurting for quite some time. But at some point, we will be able to come out of it. We will be able to invest. and we'll need to watch that as a delicate balance. And certainly, foster partnerships where groups they've never been contemplated before. Speaking to a group the other day, apparently the university's accounting department they're using hotel rooms now to take accounting exams, to have those different items. Unique, because clearly the hotels are not full. There's an asset that can be utilized. When it comes to education, certainly there's we have a lot of meeting space all across the region that quite honestly is vacant, and is going to be vacant quite honestly for quite some time. Maybe there's a partnership or unique arrangements with the different school boards to use those to help socially distance schools and classes certainly in a better fashion. Whether that's feasible or not, I don't know, but certainly now is the time for all of us to really be thinking out of the box and really be pulling together all of us at once. I'd be happy to take any questions or clarifications you may have.
Well, thanks very much, Mark, for a very thoughtful and very thorough evaluation of your industry and some concrete recommendations there on what could be done, and also the crystal balling part, which I think is going to be difficult for everyone to figure out what it's going to look like in the future. Are there any questions from committee? I'm just checking the screen here. I don't see any questions or comments, but I had a couple. And I think we're all very much aware of what kind of difficulties the hospitality and tourism industry is going to be facing in terms of closures and reduced revenues and so on. And it's not pretty. And it's also important to get support from the government. So I'm just wondering, when you're talking about advocacy for supports for the rent program and for wage subsidy to continue, once the Tourism Marketing Corporation puts that advocacy piece together, I think it'd be great to send that through to Regional Council, and we can lend our voice to that initiative as well. So once you do your strategic plan and you have those advocacy pieces, please keep us in the loop, because I think it'd be important for us to lend our voice to those advocacy pieces as well, because your industry specifically, it'll be applying to, but it'll apply to a lot of other industries as well. And we're going to need that kind of support for rent and for wage subsidy for quite some time, I think, beyond what is currently planned. So I think that's important. And let's leave that with you. And the other thing I'm wondering about is this concept of entertainment zones. I know in Oshawa, they have established an entertainment zone that's currently under development. I know Niagara Falls has an entertainment zone. Can you just tell me a little bit more about what you would envision as an entertainment zone?
Sure, and certainly. It's actually a concept that we've just, the strategic planning group is actually meeting currently, and it's been a topic that has just come up, so we're just flushing some of that through. But, if you look at, I'll use Belmont Village as an example. There's a natural geographic area, and there's a natural consortium of businesses that are there that create that. Now, they've taken that as their own, obviously, they've taken the initiatives to do that, but that could be exercised, quite honestly, even more. And then looking at the zoning or other developments that could happen around there, what could that be in the future? St. Jacobs would be a natural zone. When I say entertainment, I would use that, loosely in that component. But certainly, downtown Kitchener has its own zone already. It's certainly itemized by the BIA, and so does uptown Kitchener, or uptown Waterloo. So, there's in Cambridge, there's certainly the Galtair and Hespeler, great locations. I would say probably some of those are the most, that have the most budding opportunities for significant development for growth into the future. So really it comes down to looking, identifying where those are. Not only are they marketing pockets, but can they also be, look at the zoning, make sure that there's some, what's there, what could be adjusted, and quite honestly, what might be able to, take some of the hard edges off what could be there to exercise later.
Okay.
I would certainly throw our area in that as well, with the amount of significance. And
certainly
then
appreciate that. So keep us up to date on that, and also your advocacy pieces and the corporate marketing communications. I like your idea of linking tourism and marketing in whatever way we can into the already ongoing activities of municipalities. So that's something I think that we'll refer to our economic development group, which Rod Reguer is part of. I think that's something that is easily achievable.
Well, it'd certainly be, Waterloo Regional Tourism has an initiative called, WR United. So that's part of it. The first phase was the restaurant phase, and then bringing in obviously the attractions. The third phase of their plans are certainly to blend in the accommodators and blending it with different packages. They're coming out with obviously for those who haven't seen the picnic table project, which is garnering some great press. Will be coming out the next 2 weeks. So it's those types of things. Again, we need to be in front of our residents on a regular basis, educating them what's available to them, but also educating them, we need them out there spending. We need them out there participating in these businesses in order for these businesses to survive. They're very much still in survival mode. And as much as it's great to be open, it's great for the hype and the adrenaline for all the operators going out there, great, we can finally be open. But what will happen, similar to the patios, when they open, they're not going to be open to any great capacity. Because there's no question, the consumer ultimately dictates when they're prepared to consume goods. So, one of our committee members mentioned is the greatest challenge we have is the challenge of fear. Fear is the greatest obstacle we have to overcome. And how can we do that in a respectful manner, and also to balance it out, that people can go out. There is possible good to go out and have a good time and be safe. So I'll just leave that there.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Mark. That's really good. Some good suggestions there, and I wish you and your business and business in general all the best as you navigate some very trying times. So thank you.
Much appreciated.
Okay, so this is a public meeting, and I need to officially call for delegations. So is there anyone else on the call? There is someone who does want to speak, I'm being advised.
Yeah, they're not here yet.
Okay, just stand by. I'm getting some direction from clerk. So I am calling for additional public delegations, and apparently there is someone else who wants to speak, and we're trying to let them into the meeting.
That would be Nadia.
So Nadia.
She hasn't logged in yet. She's not in the waiting room.
So we're waiting for Nadia. Stand by. Okay, Nadia, welcome. This is the Ad Hoc Economic Recovery Committee. Thanks for joining us.
Right,
You have 5 minutes.
Not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you, sort of. Try that again.
Okay. Hang on a second. Is this better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay, yeah, sorry, just connecting here. I sent through a question Mark had touched on in his presentation. It's basically to the rent relief that we've been receiving and what happens next. I think come end of July, we're left to try to figure out with our business. I know for my business in particular, our numbers aren't there yet. People aren't really coming out.
Nadia, if I may
to determine.
Danny, maybe try camera off because there's a lot of reverb on your audio. So try camera off. Okay, try it now.
Okay, is that better?
It's a little better, marginally. But carry on. I think that we heard the first part about your concern about rent relief.
Yes. Okay, hold on. I think I might have to come back in.
Nadia, our technical people are wondering if you're watching the meeting on YouTube. If you are, just log off to YouTube and use the Zoom link.
She's just connecting again.
Nadia is reconnecting again. Okay.
If she hits *6, she should be able to.
Sorry?
If she hits *6 on her phone, it will unmute her. I can't unmute her. She has to hit *6.
Nadia, if you hit *6 on your phone, it should unmute you. Okay, are you there, Nadia? We're unable to hear. Nadia, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I would suggest that you go to the Regional Waterloo website and you can email all counselors there, and I'll be sure to respond to you on behalf of the committee. Sorry for the technical difficulties. All right, so we'll call for delegations for a second time and call for delegations for a third time. There are no additional delegations. Information correspondence. There was some correspondence from the Sustainable Development about conditions for a green recovery. All would have received that. Any other business from the committee? Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. There's some really good suggestions from the delegations. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Foxton, all those in favor, just raise your hand. All right, that's great. Thank you very much. That's carried. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll reconvene again next week. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Good job, Sean. Thank you.